Hey, what's up everybody? It's Mike from Cornfield Customs, and today we are going to jump into making a roof insert buck for a 3536 5-window coupe. So what I need to do is I need to make a roof insert buck similar to this one, but for a 3536 Ford. This one is for a 32 3-window coupe, so it's going to be similar, but the size and the profile is going to end up being a little different. So I've got this one here just for reference so you guys can see what all is going to be involved with making our base plate on the bottom and then our individual stations that cross both planes and give us our compound shape. So this is just here for a visual reference for you guys, and what we're going to make our roof insert buck off of is the roof of a 3536 5-window coupe. So I bought this roof just to make a buck off of, and it's been laying around, I think almost for a year. So I'm finally getting around to making this roof insert buck. I've made a couple roof inserts off of the roof, but it takes up a lot of space. I kind of want to get it out of here. So I'm going to make a wooden station buck like the 32 3-window, and then I can get rid of this and it'll free up a lot of space. So in this video, we're going to lay out, design, and make our buck. I'm going to try to use as many basic tools as possible. Some stuff I will use, like the vertical bandsaw and a compound miter saw, just to speed things up, but we're going to use hand drills, you can use jigsaw, you can use hand saw, and we'll cover all of that when we get in there, but this isn't going to be made on like a CNC router or anything like that. It's going to be handmade here in the shop. I'm going to bring you guys along. So let's get started, and the first thing we have to do is get a sheet of paper and make a profile for our base plate. So we've got our standard pattern paper here. That's what I use on everything. Just white auto body masking paper, and I've got it on the roll here. So we'll cut us off a big section.
Can you use other types of paper?
Yeah, you can use other types of paper. It just depends on what you like. Personally, I like the white auto body masking paper, but try butcher paper, try the green paper, and just see what you find that works best. A lot of it's personal preference.
And didn't you, I think during the class you were talking about it, don't you usually get this at like an auto body store?
Yep, we have an auto body supply store right up the street, and they have it in stock on the shelf so I can drive up and just pick it up. That way if you order butcher paper on Amazon or online, you have to wait if you run out. I like the convenience of being able to drive up 1.5 miles and grab it if I need it. Got our paper, and you always want to be careful not to get wrinkles or creases in the pattern paper. So you don't want to use something like that comes in a package, you know, they wad up paper for packing reasons. You don't want to use any of that. You want something that's nice, flat, and fresh. So it's just loosely laid in place, and I'm going to grab some of our magnets. And these are just standard pattern magnets I use, and they are available on my website, or you can order some on Amazon. And I'm just going to get the front kind of laid out. Like here is the opening, so I'm just coming beyond the opening for now and pull this kind of tight as we can, get the front stuck down. These low crown panels can be a real challenge to make bucks off of. Yeah, they're just a little bit of a challenge because it's so low crown. So you really need a car here or in your shop that you can pull the patterns off of and the sweeps to get the buck right. It's tough to do these off of drawings or dimensions unless you can ensure that everything is laid out the exact same with the same radii on the same sweep set. So if the front's a little snug, and I'll come around to the back, and I'm just going to pull it tight. Same thing, like our edge is up here, so I'll stay away from our trailing edge just a little bit.
I see they have tape under this.
Yeah.
You do that all the way around so you could see how far away you need to be?
I did that when I was making one of the other roof inserts. I did it on those two sides. I oversized my panels by 3/4 of an inch. So I just did it on those two sides so I could line the corners up and I could check how it flows across. That doesn't have anything to do with making the buck.
Okay.
So just keep working my way around. So you have to be careful because here's the inside, but then it jumps down and there's a second lip here. So we're coming beyond that second lip. And all this pattern is going to tell us is the overall size of the opening. And we need to know that for our bottom plate on our buck, so it's the same size opening that we have, and then we can build our vertical stations off of that. And anything that needs tightened up, we just tighten it up as we go. We don't want any loose or wrinkly paper, so we want to do the best we can to get it nice and tight. But you don't want to pull it so tight that you tear it or keep pulling the magnets loose. All right, we got a few wrinkles over here I want to pull out. All right, everything seems to be laying pretty flat, and now I can grab our carpenter's pencil, and I'm going to come in where that second flange is. And I'm going to use our carpenter's pencil just to mark this. And you want to use like a pencil or something that marks really good. A lot of guys I'll see, they'll take like a dirty finger and they'll rub it on. It's not, that smudge line is not going to be as precise as our pencil mark. So I say it a lot, but we're going to aim small and miss small.
You were talking about this in the class. I think someone asked about using like a marker and smudging.
Yeah.
And you said aim small, miss small.
Yep. Yeah, because like we want to reduce our margin of error as much as we can. And like if, say we have a marker and we kind of know where the edge is, like say this line wasn't here and we come in and we're trying to guess where the line is, then we have to connect all those dotted lines, and that could get us off track. So using a carpenter's pencil is a really good way of marking our perimeter line here. So while I'm here, and I don't want to forget, I'm just going to draw an arrow and write front. All right, so we have everything traced. Now we can pull our magnets back off, and I'll set the 32 roof insert to the side, and we can trim this out.
I want to ask this right now.
Yep.
Because it's probably going to be one of the biggest questions.
Yep.
Why do you have the holes in it?
All right, so we'll cover the holes multiple times. Actually, I'll lay it back up here. So with the holes, when you lay a sheet of metal on here and you're putting shape into it, how are you going to be able to see inside of there? You have to have holes. So these holes are so you can reach in and you can touch and feel where the panel touches the stations. And if you don't have it on a solid table, like say we have it on a stand, like this, then we can come up and we can reach through these holes. We can shine a flashlight up in there. The holes are only there so we can gain access to see and feel what we're doing. A lot of people seem to think it's about saving weight or just to look neat, and I don't care if the buck weighs 10,000 pounds as long as it does its job. Like, yeah, it's nice that I can pick it up and move it, but I could pick it up and move it even if it didn't have the holes. So the holes are only there so you can see what you're doing. And you can see that on the fender buck, which just is a little bit more complicated, and we'll get into doing like a big fender buck. We're starting with the roof insert buck because it's easier to lay out, easier to make, and it's a good stepping stone to start with. Fender bucks are a little bit more challenging. So here we can see that it touches here, all of that stuff. But when we get a solid surface on it, like here, well now, how do we see where it touches? We can reach up through these holes and we can touch the inside of it, and we can shine lights up in there and we can look through all of that stuff. So the holes are just there so you can see in and touch and get a good idea of where things are laying. So the holes, they look cool, but they're mainly there so you can do your job efficiently. Just like with laying everything out with a pencil mark, we want to take our time and be efficient when we're trimming. We don't want to come in and rush through it. If you're going to move with purpose. Don't speed through stuff. We're not in a race. Take your time, because if you rush through making your patterns, your part will be rushed through and you have to start over anyway. So move with purpose, be efficient, but aim small, miss small in every aspect.
Something I've been telling myself recently is like, it's really annoying when you're working on a car and a project takes way longer than you think it's going to, but it takes as long as it takes.
It takes what it takes, and rushing through is just going to make it take longer. I tell that with everybody. You know, if you get impatient and just try to make it happen, it's probably not going to work out so well. Projects take what they take, time-wise, effort-wise, and just embrace it, go with the flow. It's better to be patient. Just like the tortoise and the hare, slow and steady wins the race. And if not, you're just gonna exhaust yourself running in circles.
I was talking to someone about this, about the highs and the lows of a project. There's, you know, like fixing a car up and then driving it, that's a high.
Yep.
But struggling with a bolt under the dash, that's a low. You don't want to be doing that. But I still appreciate doing the lows.
Yeah. Well, that's the bad thing, is you can't appreciate the highs without the lows. Mm-hmm. And none of this stuff is easy. None of it is, I hate to say it's not fun, because it can be, but it all turns into work. You know, not everything's going to be awesome at all times. There's parts of the job that absolutely suck, no matter what it is. I mean, if you own a restaurant, there's going to be good times and bad times. If you own a rollback company, there's going to be good times and bad times. If you shape sheet metal, there's going to be a lot of bad times, but there'll be some good times. And that's what I find with a lot of people that come here. They want it to be, look at this amazing part I made, and look how exciting it is, and only have the good part. They don't realize that there's 40 to 1,000 hours of sucking before you get to that point. Like I said, none of this is easy. A lot of it's hard work, and a lot of it's not fun. But the fun part is when you get to stand back and look at what you made from nothing. All right, so this will end up being our base plate. So what we'll have to do is we're not going to lay out any holes or anything yet, because we don't know where our vertical stations are going to be. I always do the holes and the base plate pretty much last once all the vertical stations are set. So this is what is going to be the overall base plate, just like on this one. It's just a solid surface on the back. So as far as plywood goes, I like to use like cabinet grade birch plywood. You can use, I wouldn't use anything thinner than 1/2 inch. Sometimes I'll use 1/2 inch, sometimes I'll use 3/4. The more rigid you can build your buck, the more resilient it's going to be and the longer it's going to last. I think I've got some 1/2 inch plywood in the back just from another project that's kind of left over. So that's probably what we'll end up using on this. I'm going to set this to the side for now, and I'm going to grab some sweeps, and we'll start to get the radii laid out across the roof before we get into making this. That way we're not cutting wood and then coming back and then having to do a bunch more measuring. We'll try to do as much measuring as we can to start, get our main center forward to back, our main center left and right, and then we can go from there on it. So all of these flat pieces here on the wall. They're called sweeps. It's a unit of measure, but essentially breaking it down to simplest terms possible is they are large defined radius gauges. So I don't know what the sweep or the radius is across the roof, so I'm just gonna grab a handful of them, and we'll probably come in, we'll start with a 13. Like I said, we'll just take a handful of them, and we'll probably still have to make a couple trips back. All right, so we've got our pile of sweeps here, and earlier in the video I mentioned that I'd went ahead and made a couple roof inserts. So this is one of the aluminum skins that I made as a test, and you don't have to do it this way, but it'll make life easier for checking with sweeps and flow. I've already spent a bunch of time making sure that I like the shape. It can be a little bit more of a challenge if you don't have something in the middle of the roof to support your sweep, just because you're trying to visualize across a negative space. So you can do it. It's a little bit more of a challenge. You have to use a little bit more of your artistic eye just to visualize what it's going to look like with a solid surface underneath of it. So with our panel on there, this is just the 13 that we started with, and I'm going to start roughly in the center. So there with our sweep blade on there, it touches in the middle, but you can see that gap at the outside edges. So that means it's not a 13. So we're going to jump up a couple sizes. So 15, 14, we'll jump up to a 19, and we'll see how that looks. So a 19 is a little bit too much. And this could end up being a couple different radii clamped together. So in the center it could be, so that is a 17, and it's still a little high, and then the edges fall over a little bit. So we will grab our 15. That looks a lot better. And like I said, it kind of falls away here at our edges. So I'm gonna kind of make the executive call. I'm gonna wipe this off first with some alcohol. That way we can leave some Sharpie marks on here. And if you don't have sweeps, you can make your own contour gauges out of just thin sheet metal. You can cut it to the radius you want, or you can cut it into flat strips and use a kick shrinker to shrink and stretch to get that radius that you're after. So we've got this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where our edge is. So I'm just putting a reference mark here, and it doesn't matter if the sweep is centered because it's the same radius all the way across. And then I'm going to come up to just where the radius starts to fall away. And I'm going to put our edge mark here. But I'm not going to do our radius mark here because it should be concentric, or it should be the same. So I'm just going to measure from here to here, and I'll measure from here to here and put a reference mark. That way we can make sure that we're staying symmetrical. So we'll lay that there. We'll grab our tape measure. So that's 6 5/8. And then we'll measure over from our other line. So then we have to figure out what the radius is from that 6 5/8. So there's a little bit of a ghost line here where I was laying the sweep on and it scratched it. So that's kind of where I'm going to base that on. So I'm just going to come in and put our reference mark at 6 5/8. And this is where having a solid model underneath makes it way easier, because if we just made our sweep touch here and across, we might not get that exaggerated drop on the edges. So we'll grab 21. And it needs a little bit more. So this is a 23. The 23 is pretty close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write number 23 here, and then it comes back to our 15, and then this is a number 23 as well. So this is our left to right center line sweep. So we can sit this one to the side, and now we can check our front to back. So we'll start with a 21, just grab one out of the pile. And there you can see that it's a lot more aggressive. So when you look at these roof inserts, they look almost flat, but they have a lot of shape to them. And it can be really deceiving. And even like the 35-36, it's gonna have a lot more shape towards the back than we do at the front. So here you can see with our 21, if we just hold it in the middle, it's got a big gap at the front and a big gap at the back. But if we drop that down, it comes in a lot closer from here to here. So what I'm going to do is grab, see what the most aggressive one I have in the pile is. So 25. So 25 only comes to about here. So I'm going to set this one to the side for now, and we'll walk back and grab some more sweeps and see what else we can get. And we want to check it with as many as we can until it starts to pull away. And then we can address whether it's two different radii, one that blends into the other, or if it's one constant radius. So here with a 33, it looks a lot better. Like, and it's starting to lift away in a couple spots. But what I'm gonna say is here is where the radius starts to pull away, and here is our front edge. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write front edge. I'm gonna line that back up, and I'm gonna put a reference mark there. So then we just have to find what the sweep is from this mark out the back. So this one is a 35. We need a little bit more. 37. It's close. We'll do one more. And a 39. I like that. So a lot of that's probably getting hung up here, so we can shift that back. And that fits pretty good. Mm-hmm. So we'll put a reference mark there and a reference mark here. Rear. So now we have our sweeps lined up for our two front and our forward to back center and our left to right center. And all of these sweeps we can just set to the side for now. I'm just going to lay them here on the saw bench or the saw table in case we need them for something else as we go. Now we can go get our plywood and start laying all of this out. What I'm going to do before then is just give you guys a little bit of a sketch of kind of what we need to do. And I'll just sketch it here on the table. So I'll wipe off some of our other drawings of the past. So what we end up needing to do is we have to come up with the height of our stations, which doesn't matter. It could be whatever you want. But you want to keep things realistic. You don't want to make your side plates 18 inches tall, because then you're going to have your perimeter band 18 inches tall plus your radius, and your buck would end up being this tall. You don't really need that. So I usually like to make our front station about 4 to 6 inches tall. So why that's important is because what we're going to do is, here's our sketch. So this is going to be our base plate, right? Then we're going to come in and we're going to measure from our base plate up, we'll just say 4 inches on this one. So this is 4 inches and this is 4 inches. And then we'll lay our sweep across on that 4-inch plane. And that'll give us our curve. So then our perimeter band will be 4 inches. And then when we come in and do our secondary one, our outside will be dictated by that height in the center. And that's how we'll get our buck center line based on our outside line, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
So what are these again?
This is, we'll just say that this is front to back station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so this is our edge. We'll have another edge plate here. This is our center, and this is our center. So you can base it on the center if you want, or you can base it on the end.
Here.
I like to base it on the end so we can take our sweep.
Let me come over there.
Okay. I like to base it on our end here, so then we can lay our sweep across this way, and we can figure out what our height needs to be, if that makes sense. So instead of laying this out and cutting plywood to start, we're going to come in, and I'm going to just put a 4-inch reference mark here. And we'll measure here 4 inches. And again, this is going to have a 23 to it, so it might shrink a little bit, but we're not talking about it shrinking 2 inches on our edge plate. You know, it'll only be, what was it, maybe an 1/8 inch. So what I'm going to do is, this is the edge of our roof, and that's where it changes. We'll do the same thing here. Here's the edge of our roof, and that's where it changes. So then I'm going to come in and just mark this on the table. And let me get a combination square so we can put those reference marks. And if you don't have a big layout table, you can do it on the floor. I like to have a table because I really do not like working on the floor. But just use what you've got. So I'm going to square it off of the edge here. So this is, again, this is our left to right. So keep that in mind. I'm just going to measure. This is 41. So if we come 20.5, that should be our center line. Just double check our math. 20.5. And this will come in handy later on. So this is 4 7/8. So for our left to right station, it doesn't matter because we've went ahead and we've made this 4 inches tall. But since we have two opposing radii, we need to know what this height is for when we do our front to back. So since on our left and to right, our center or our edges are 4 inches, when we do our front to back, it's going to need to be 4 7/8, since it's going to be at the middle of our left to right station. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That way it gives us our compound shape both directions.
Of course.
So from this point, we need to grab some
wood?
some folding stands and some wood, and we can drag a sheet up here and start laying this stuff out and get to cutting wood. All right, so we've got our sheet of wood here. Let's see if I can get it out without killing myself or hitting the unibody.
Nope. Hit the truck.
Yeah?
It's totaled.
Yeah, it just adds character. I'd rather hit the truck than the GT40.
Yeah.
So there's our wood. This is 1/2 inch cabinet grade birch. I'll grab our pattern because we're going to start with our pattern for our base plate. And we'll have to rotate it. So we'll lay that out, and I'm going to go around it with some 3/4 inch masking tape just so we can clean up any waves from me laying it out with the pencil and cutting it with scissors. So it's going to give us an opportunity to clean up any errors we may have made. So I'm just going to come into the center and tape it down, and then we'll pull out. And then we'll do that forward to backwards and in the corners so we can hold our pattern down. The fun thing, since unfortunately wood is non-magnetic, we could use push pins, but then you have to worry about tearing your pattern with the push pin. So a lot of times I don't like to use push pins if I can avoid it.
What if we just put a magnet on the bottom of the wood?
You'd have to have such a strong magnet because it's 1/2 inch thick.
Okay.
Even with like 16 gauge aluminum, it doesn't really like to hold all that well. So you'd have to have like a rare earth magnet or something super powerful, which I usually don't have here in the shop because I don't run into instances a lot where I need a magnet that strong. One of the other big questions I get is, with the CNC plasma and access to a laser, why do I still make my bucks out of wood? I personally like the wood bucks. I've got some steel bucks. I don't think they're any faster to make, especially if you don't have CNC stuff. And the big thing is, what happens if, we'll just say that we design all of this in CAD, send it out to the laser shop, and we were wrong. We say it's a 32 sweep and it's actually a 31. Well, now it's going to be a lot harder to correct because we're sanding steel versus sanding wood. It's a lot easier to correct any errors we might make. And I like the look and the feel of the wood buck. It goes back to kind of the tradition and the art of metal shaping and buck making.
It's classy.
Yeah. But I really suck at working with wood, so sometimes I wonder why I do it. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our tape, and any rough edges or wavy lines in our cut, I can correct with the tape. And you have two options you can do at this point. You can go ahead and build your 3/4 inch overlay into the buck, or you can remember that you add that onto the sheet for later. Personally, I don't like to add the 3/4 to the buck, just because if I forget or somebody else comes in, then they're going to make the panel even bigger. I'd rather make it the real size and then add that material, because I always add 3/4. So if I get in the habit of always adding 3/4 to this, I don't have to worry about remembering to add that 3/4. And when we get into making production skins, I will make a layout blank out of aluminum, and that will be oversized. So then I don't have to use a pattern, and I don't have to offset the edge with tape anymore. It's just an aluminum blank that's the right size with the oversize, and I can trace it, and it's got our grid pattern on it. So for now, we're going to make the buck the same size as the opening, so we'll have to remember we need to lay out on the inside of the tape. If we were oversizing it by 3/4, then we would mark it to the outside of the tape. See, there's a really good shot where I got sloppy with my cut. And I can clean that up.
When I was trying to make parts for my car, trying to do the tape thing, I completely forgot how you do this little turn.
Yeah, you put the pressure on the tape on the outside, and that allows these little wrinkles to develop, and it makes the turn a lot easier and cleaner. come back and we'll just work these wrinkles in on themselves in the corners so we get a nice clean radius. And I'm going to beat it into your guys' head. Take your time, be patient. There's no rush in any of this. Again, if you rush through stuff, that's when you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to get sloppy. Don't be afraid to correct things as you go. Like, there's no sense in doing something if it's not being done right. Because like even here, there's a flat spot. So I'm probably going to cut that out and clean that up a little bit. Let me grab a razor blade because we need one anyway. So I don't know if you can see it, just right there to there, there's a little bit of a flat spot, and it's right where that error was in our pattern. So this goes back to, I made an error in our pattern from when I cut it out. That translates into our layout, and if I left that alone, then our part could potentially have an error. So this all goes back to aim small, miss small, correct things when you see it. And that's why I like to lay it out with tape, because it gives me a good visual. The tape is going to lay nice and smooth, or it should lay nice and smooth and not have any abrupt flat spots in it. And I'm going to just let that overhang there because I'm only focused on the inside radius, and that looks a lot better. So then I'm going to come in and just cut our tape that's holding our pattern in so we can pull the pattern and set it to the side and make our inside radius mark to cut our blank out or our base plate out. And still talking about that flat spot, if I wouldn't have corrected that, would it have been the end of the world? Probably not, but I'm trying to build a tool that I can use for the rest of my career. So why wouldn't I just spend the extra couple minutes and do it when I'm trying to make a buck that I can use on 35-36 roof inserts forever? Because then I could potentially, 20 years down the road, I could still be mad at myself that I didn't correct it. It didn't take that long, and it makes everything that much nicer. So we'll set that there. Then we can come in with our pencil, using the tape as our edge to mark this. Make sure you get your tape stuck down all the way.
What's your favorite way to cut these out?
I prefer to use the vertical bandsaw. It just makes things easier. You can use a jigsaw. I suck at a jigsaw. I don't get as good of a cut as I would like. So probably what we'll do is I'll come in and I'll rough cut this with I might just rough cut it with the circular saw to be quick and easy. And then we'll go over to the bandsaw and cut it out. If you didn't have any power equipment, I mean, you could do this with a handsaw. It's just going to take you a little bit longer.
It's kind of like people asking with the power hammer about hand tools.
Yep.
It just takes a little longer.
It takes a lot longer. And here for me, like, I'm not charging anybody to make this buck because it's something I feel that I need so I can produce inserts. So I definitely want to be efficient. You know, I don't want to spend 3 weeks making it with basic hand tools because that takes away from time that I could be working on client cars. So I want to be efficient, use all the tools at my disposal to do the best job the most efficiently that I can. So then we can peel our tape off. And we'll have to just double check, because I did forget to mark which was our front. So definitely not that way. So we can use these little pieces of tape, line those back up, And we can come back. This is front, up. So instead of using the jigsaw, I'm going to use a circular saw just to rip this off, and then we'll go over to the vertical bandsaw and do all our fine cutting. All right, so now we have our base plate for our buck made, and I think that's gonna wrap this episode of the buck process up. I know this can be really boring and kind of tedious, but like I said earlier in this video, not everything is gonna be fun and packed full of adventure and excitement. A lot of this stuff is tedious and boring, but you have to get through the boring parts to get to the good parts. So I could keep going on with continuing this, but I think this video is approaching an hour long already, so I don't think you guys would want to sit through a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour long video just to watch this buck be made. So we're going to break it up into some smaller sections for you guys. That way you can watch it at your leisure, and it's easier to keep track of which episodes you've seen. But yeah, like I said, we're going to wrap this one up, and we'll get back to it and get you guys more episodes. So make sure to stay tuned for that as we work through the buck making process, and probably at the end I'll go ahead and make a skin to fit the buck to show you that process as well. So I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this video as well as many of our other ones. Especially now, it's the new year, 2025. We're going to work really hard to get you guys the videos you want to see and keep upping our game with quality, content, and getting you what you want. So again, thank you guys so much for checking this out, and we will catch you on the next one.